So it is that time again, every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. On the YouTube, every single Thursday, everywhere you listen to audio podcasts, Because Cannabis from Wayward Media, BC Wehmand, Dustin Kava. How you doing today, Dustin?
I'm doing amazing today. Feeling great.
Are doing great. You're looking great. You're looking great, dressed in all black. You're like a good Charlotte song come to life. Maybe a Rolling Stone song, depending on what area you're from. Welcome, everyone, to Because Cannabis, every single Wednesday on YouTube. Do us a favor. While you're listening to us right now, if you're listening to us on YouTube, if you're watching the video, if you're looking at Dustin's beautiful all black garb and his beautiful unmaintained beard, I just learned that before we went live today. I assumed Dustin Kava used a tremendous amount of products to be this hirsuitely handsome gentleman that he is, but no. That is au natural. By the way, congrats to you, Dustin Kava, for doing that. If you're watching on video, if you're admiring Dustin's chic look, click that subscription button because then you'll get to see him every Wednesday at 4:20 p.m. Or if you're listening on iTunes, if you're listening on Spotify, we also have video on Spotify now. Thank you, Anchor, hooked us up. So we have video on Spotify. If you're listening there, Google Play, anywhere that you listen to audio podcasts, give us a follow, rate us 5 stars, if nothing else, for Dustin's svelte aesthetic. Dustin, it is the start of warmish. I warn you, warmish weather here in Northeast Ohio. Our guest today continues our trend of warm weather states. We're always talking these warm weather folks, but here, Dustin, we are on the precipice of the warm season about to happen in Northeast Ohio, which brings to mind like getting outside, getting into nature, getting outdoors. And there's an activity that my wife and I, and there's many things that couples agree on or don't agree on, but there's a very particular food item and or activity combination, which is always fun to combine the two, that my wife loves, that I'm just not down with, Dustin. Controversial opinion about to flow right now. Don't get offended. I hate s'mores.
Oh, wow.
Hate them. Chocolate I love. Here's the rub. I like graham crackers. I can eat a box of graham crackers in a day, son. You give me a little bud, a little love. I'm down. I'll eat a box of graham crackers in a moment. It's the marshmallow. It's the freaking marshmallow, man. I'm not a marshmallowy guy. Where do you sit on marshmallows, on s'mores? Lay it out. There's the friends and the families of s'mores. They need to hear it.
You know I get down with marshmallows. You know I do. That it's like I'm not even sure. This is 10 years I've known you, and this fact has eluded me for so long that I'm kind of worried. This might actually provide quite the divide.
The first schism has happened in our relationship, and it's going to come down to the freaking marshmallow, bro. I'm not down with it. And there are so many ways, and people get so particular about marshmallows. Are you one of those people, by the way? Are you a marshmallow roaster? Like, do you roast them, you put it above the fire, eat them gooey and hot?
You know what? I am too fucking lazy for any of that. So I am the marshmallow burner. I'm that guy who's just going to light it on fire. I'm going to blow it out real quick and I'm out. I'm done.
I don't, if I do have them, it can't be with like a crispy black shell, right? There are people who like that. Like, I know someone who, when you take a hot dog, they're like, it better be dead. And I mean like dead, black and dead. I'm like, I don't know why he talk. That person doesn't have that accent. But that's how I made them into my mind. Like, they like it burnt to a crisp. And there are people who like their marshmallows burnt to a crisp. And it's not for me, man. It's just not a snack. And then when you put them together, I got to be honest. I think the marshmallow takes away from the chocolate and the graham cracker. It is an appalling tradition that is heavily favored by people that I'm just not down with. I'm sticking to my guns.
We're going to talk after the show about this.
Well, I was inspired by marshmallows. Thinking about marshmallows, part of the other reason, Dustin Kava, is because our guest today, Roy Lipski from budlove.com, used and thought about Marshmallow Leaf. And I don't know if marshmallows grow leaves. I need to know the whole history behind marshmallow leaves and marshmallows, but none of that matters right now. Roy from budlove.com. Where do you sit on taking marshmallows between chocolate and graham crackers? Am I out of my element on this? Or are you down with s'mores? Like, what kind of treat, where does the s'more rank in your must-have treats? Garbage or fry me up one right now?
So, my kids love s'mores. I am okay with it, but I can't have more than one. It's just a bit sweet for me.
Yeah, right. It's not even, I don't know. I'm not down. I'm going to go on that hill. I'm going to die on that.
I love the meltedness and all of that. And listening to you guys, trying to avoid this divide that may be coming between you.
Clearly.
We can all agree on Marshmallow Leaf.
Yes, Marshmallow Leaf. That is one of the things. We're going to start there in just a second. Roy Lipski, the CEO, co-founder of budlove.com. You can find it budlove.com, socially pretty much everywhere. Budlove Mixer. Put that little ad about symbol into there. So Roy, you are a new company. You're launching out. And we're going to talk about budlove.com, why it's there, talk about some of the coolness of what it is. And maybe we'll start there. Why don't you describe, give your elevator pitch. You're a CEO. You got a few different pitches and speeches here. Marshmallow Leaf is the base of this amazing product, and I do want to be educated on it. But let's let the audience in a little bit about what Budlove is, and then we'll delve into what makes why Marshmallow Leaf makes up the core of it.
Budlove is the world's first mixer for cannabis. Like the mixer in a cocktail, but for cannabis flower. You know, tequila's nice, but margaritas are nice too sometimes.
Yes.
It's not an either or.
I love it. BC, were you ever a mixer with any of your flower?
Well, a couple of things. So we've talked about this a little bit. I tend to roll, I'm down with the pre-rolls, and how I love it. There's a lot of great cones. I love cones. Budlove.com's got some cones right now. I think you get free cones with purchase of a product there on the website. So I tend to roll in cones, but a lot of it is like what I would say the leftovers, right? So I have like my particular strain, but I would mix and match. I kind of have a vat of it. And then recently I started using, because I met a friend who was growing high quality CBG flower. Shout out to Healing Canopy Hemp Farm. A Cannabis Cup winning CBG flower, an amazing flower. And so I got some of his flower and I started to split it, basically, like to both extend my bud and then add a different unique terp profile for it. And within 2 weeks, this is how I know that Google is listening to you and the phone is listening to you. Roy, within 2 weeks, you guys reached out about the show and found out, literally, I started talking about it, how I just discovered this amazing idea. And I was like, man, this would make a great company. And then all of a sudden, damn, there's already a company out there, Budlove, putting out these packets that allow you to do just that, except you went a step further and kind of created very distinct flavor profiles to mix a sativa with this particular profile of terps and CBG, and then this marshmallow leaf is the base, or a neutral flavor, or even tobacco to mix with it to enhance. And you're right. Straight tequila is wonderful, I suppose, for some people, but that's not how most people do. They got Jack has a Coke, right, to go with it. A Seagram's has a 7. These things. And Bud can have love. It can have a little bit of different profile. But what I found, Roy, is exactly what you created, that the CBG alone was adding a different, not only taste profile, but a different reaction, right? A different, both either therapeutic effect or a psychoactive reaction. There was a different profile happening within that. So you decided, and we'll talk about it, kind of the creation of this company. Where was the first impetus to say, I think I can make this idea into more and really create a flavor profile and brand? What was the impetus behind Budlove?
Oh, it's a bit of a story.
No, we got time.
If you want me to launch into this, but a bit about myself. I come from the UK. I'm a scientist by education, biochemist, but I've basically spent my career as an entrepreneur, bringing new to the world products, typically from sort of scientific invention, and bringing it to the world. So fast forward to 2015. And a friend of mine, Tom, I was looking for my next thing. He said, Roy, you should have a look at this cannabis industry. And I was like, Tom, those days are over for me. But I had a look and I just, fell in love. The thought that cannabis could be legal would have been a dream come true for me in my early 20s. But genuinely seeing and beginning to learn about the therapeutic side of cannabis, meeting people that it's really changed their life. I thought, this is amazing. I want to get involved. And being the scientist that I am, I was looking for that new technology angle. And I found it. I teamed up with a professor from Rice University. I was living back in Houston then. To develop a technology to biomanufacture cannabinoids. This is how we produce flavors. This is how we produce vitamins. This is how we produce a lot of medicines, and it has lots of advantages. And the vision was, cannabinoids are going to be in every household. We need to have a way to make them that really is suitable for that mass market application. So fast forward 2021, we succeeded. A lot of hard work. We were one of the first companies in the world to actually biomanufacture cannabinoids. We had a metric ton of CBG.
Yeah.
A metric ton. And it's like, what do we do with this?
Well, we've had conversations with a couple doctors, and they've talked a lot about, that idea of testing the drug on drug interactions, and how the heck do we supply? How do we get that CBG to do this drug on drug interaction testing if we can't even get it in this massive amounts that we need, or get it readily, have it available in that
level as well. It's about
right. Exactly. Yeah. And consistency over 6 months or 2 years and stuff like that. And so that's what Creo did originally, right? It's the fermentation process to help to do that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Cannabinoids for all these mainstream and medical applications. But unfortunately, this was a technical success, and we got 23 patents or whatever. But the market for CBG had not developed the way we were expecting it to. When we started, CBD was on the rise, and everyone was like, CBG is going to be the next CBD, and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So here we are with a bit of a problem on our hands. And someone had the idea, well, does it do anything with cannabis? And it seems like no one had really looked at that. So we did this study, large study, 650 participants, and we gave them 2 drinks. One was a pure THC drink, 5 milligrams per dose. The other was a THC CBG drink, 2.5 CBG, 2.5 THC. They didn't know anything about these drinks other than their cannabis drinks. They drank one on one day, they drank one on another day, they reported back. The results were amazing. Firstly, they said they got just as high of both drinks, even though one of them had half the amount of THC. Next, they said even though they got just as high, it was a different experience. They said it was more happy, it was more social, it was more of a gentle up and a gentle down. And then finally, this was the kicker. About 25% of people said they had some amount of anxiety with the THC only drink. 0 did with the THC CBG.
Yeah. And that to me was the biggest. Having tried your product, is the biggest thing for me. In Ohio, even as a patient, we're not allowed necessarily to combust it, to light it on fire. We have to vape it and stuff like that. So I got to experiment a lot with pulling that CBG off at the 130 or 150 ranges temp wise, and then stepping myself up and experiencing some of the other terpenes that you've infused in there. And for me, that's the biggest thing, is I consume a lot for pain, but anxiety always follows it. And so being able to mix and knock out some of that anxiety it's actually allowing me to use my medicine in a way that I need to use my medicine. And so it wasn't necessarily this experience driven thing for me. It's allowing me to do the normal things that I need, which I couldn't normally do. And I think that's a really powerful spectrum with your product, that I can add it to be more creative and add it to do all, but also be taking away some of these other things that are just almost insurmountable the more and more I digest, or the more I intake of it, of THC. Right. So yeah, I really admired that about this. And one of the biggest things to me was, what's the texture like this going to be like in terms of after it's done? Like, how's it going to resonate in my pipe? If I'm not rolling it up into something and smoking it that way, what's that experience like? Is it just as easy to clean? Do I notice, and I have to say it was a immensely more cleaner product in terms of how much residue and resin was created, and a heck of a lot easier to clean out of my pipe. So all of those things, I'm sold on Bud Love. I really.
No, thank you, Dustin. That's wonderful. Yeah. So CBG is the magic ingredient. This is how it all started. And as I said, no one had done this experiment before. We looked in the internet, we looked at the literature, no one had talked about it. So we did file a patent, but that's a different story. And then we said to ourselves, okay, well, how do we bring this benefit to people? And as we looked at the cannabis market, one thing jumped out is most of cannabis is flower. Over 50% of the market is
Yeah.
flower. So we needed a product that could put the CBG back into flower. And that was the genesis of Bud Love. Now, a lot of things came along the way, like the Marshmallow Leaf, which I'll be happy to talk about.
Yes, we do got to learn about Marshmallow Leaf.
That was the beginning, about let's get the CBG back in, and not in any old amount. We wanted a certain ratio. We were trying to get back to that 1-to-1.
Yes.
So we got 15% by weight CBG in Marshmallow Leaf. So if you do a 50-50 Bud Love cannabis, it's close to a 1-to-1 THC to CBG ratio.
It almost reminds me of like paying homage to older genetics and stuff like that. It's like, it gives me that same feeling of a more balanced transition with it. Yeah, I didn't even think about it in that regard.
Well, let's talk about. I was gonna say, let's talk about the the gooey confection in the room here, the Marshmallow Leaf, right? So this became kind of the base of the product. And so when we were kind of doing some research and Googling it, and I saw it, I read the description, I Googled it, researched it. We found out, it's the third most consumed leaf in the United States and such after tobacco. We're like, wow. But as I told people, right, and I work at the Cleveland School of Cannabis, me and Dustin talked to most of our professional and social circles are people who consume cannabis, and they're very, a lot of them are very knowledgeable about CBD and about even CBG and all these other cannabinoids. But as I talked to them, about these products, and I would show them the packet and I read it, every single one of them went, Marshmallow Leaf? Like, what's that? Is it a thing? I'm like, I don't know, but it's this thing. And apparently, as I would then educate, what I read from Wikipedia, then spouted back, it's brilliant at that, right? Just here's what it is. I realized it's very commonly used. It seems to have a lot of therapeutic effects. It falls a lot in line with what people use CBD or straight CBG or any other these other herbal remedies for. How did you guys come about with CBG? Ended up being kind of, or with Marshmallow Leaf, and then just. Okay, this is gonna sound really bad, right? Because I have to know this. It's not like a marshmallow, right? Like there's no like.
It's a plant in the marsh.
It's a plant.
It grew in the marshes, correct? Like that's okay.
I know it's not a real marshmallow plant, people. I just got to clarify that I know that marshmallows don't grow
These
on
little
plants.
white.
I just got to make sure everyone listening knows I understand that it was a joke, sort of. All right, educate us, Roy.
So let's start off with marshmallow. It's called marshmallow because it grows in marshes. It's a mallow that grows in marshes. But marshmallow that we eat today is called marshmallow because back in Victorian days, they used to make marshmallows from the root of the marshmallow plant combined with egg whites. That's how marshmallow was born. Today, they don't use the plant. Today, it's all
sugar.
It's all bunny shaped and it's a peep now.
But as a plant, it's an ancient medicinal herb. You'll see it in Chinese medicine. You'll also see it in the European herbal medicine compendium. And it's been used for a number of things. Probably most interesting for us is chest complaints, people with coughs or congestion or things like that. Now, that's not why we chose Marshmallow Leaf, and I'll tell you why, but why we did end up choosing it. But the unexpected advantage of using Marshmallow Leaf is that when you smoke it with cannabis, it makes the smoke much less harsh. People cough less. It's less hard on the throat. One of my favorite client feedbacks was, I've got asthma and I didn't even cough once. So for a lot of people, that's huge. Now, how did we choose Marshmallow Leaf? Well, the obvious first choice was hemp. Why not just put CBG on hemp? And there were two reasons we didn't go down that route. The first was smoking hemp can be quite harsh. And the second one is hemp is full of other cannabinoids, in particular CBD. Now, we didn't want the CBD because from a science point of view, CBD has a very different effect combined with THC than CBG does. CBD actually counteracts THC. They're fighting for the same receptor. And so it basically reduces the effect of THC, which is great if you want to come down, if you're too high or whatever, but not for what we were after. So we needed a base that had no CBD or other cannabinoids on it that we could put the CBG on, and which was relatively safe,
Yeah, safe is a big one. It's been smoked for centuries. So the testing, the effects of it, how it affects the body, all of that has been known for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's safe. It's got a mild taste. It's not going to really mess things up from a taste point of view. It burns right. So, you know, when you put it in with with your cannabis, it's going to burn good. And that's really why actually people in China smoke marshmallow leaf cigarettes when they're trying to quit smoking tobacco. So that was how we got them.
I don't want to call the smoke less hot as if it could be. You're still igniting it, you're still inhaling it and that, but it is. It's that smoothness also is a heat thing. When I smoke it, it just seemed, yes, not as hot, easier to exhale. And even the aftertaste of the marshmallow leaf is not a bad aftertaste. It's not a bad, like a lingering thing. You just kind of get nips of it slightly here and there, you know, under the terpenes. And it's a really smooth experience. And I could see them gravitating towards, as they're quitting cigarettes, doing a 50-50 split and then a 75-25 split and kind of weeding themselves off with that same succession. So that's kind of cool. That's a neat thing. What the CBG in the marshmallow leaf that you're adding to it, it's hemp derived from the United States, correct?
Correct. So we start off with very pure CBG, like 99% purity, and we have a manufacturing process. The whole manufacturing is another whole story. You know, people think, oh, it's simple, you just spray CBG onto marshmallow leaf. Well, there's a problem, right? If you're trying to put that much CBG on a marshmallow onto leaf, and you try and spray it, you're going to get lumps. So it's going to be very unevenly spread, which means that when you buy your packet of Bud Love, it could have anything between 5 and 25% CBG.
Yeah.
So we have a process that is proprietary. We've licensed it. There's no solvent involved. It's totally clean, but it distributes the CBG perfectly evenly. So every packet is exactly the same.
It's like electrically, statically charging it to the leaf or something. It's like he's coughing there.
But I can't tell you.
It's so you have this product, and so now you have in the process of creation, right? So maybe you figured out and you got all this process. All right, we figured out how to get the CBG. We understand how the CBG interacts well with the marshmallow leaf. We found some additional, like medicinal and interesting benefits from the marshmallow leaf, which includes the less harsh cough. But we have to have some pizzazz, right? Budlove.com. You can't just say, here's some marshmallow leaf. It looks like regular herb. So now we talk branding. And so you decided to create some and using the traditional language, which I think is good, you know, whether it's the hybrid, the indica, the sativa, and then creating these flavor profiles like what I have here, which is the tropical shipwreck, which is a sativa centric, you know, paired well with sativa strains. I think you have, you know, obviously, and I think Dustin had the other ones. I have some neutral, right? Once again, with me onto there. And so we have, I believe the blue is the indica centric one.
And we got Inspire, which is this. And then what do we got? We got tobacco here.
Oh yeah,
which I really enjoyed.
And
as
you know
well.
what? I'm glad to see Dustin's packets were actually opened.
Yeah, I haven't got there yet. I know I feel terrible. We actually had that conversation before you joined. Dustin's like,
well, we actually been filming. We were planning on filming certain things with the packaging, so we were like, "Don't open yours, man. I'll go through mine. Don't worry."
We were trying to make a list. We had a brand idea. We're going to pitch you a commercial when we're done here. So now let's go and let's figure out, like, so now you're like, we need a little pizzazz. We need to create these flavors. How did we end up where you did with the 4 or 5 different kind of branding that you have, and why or what makes it about, for example, what makes a tropical shipwreck, what makes this pair well with a sativa, or the blueberry or apple ones pair better with a hybrid or indica that Dustin have? How does that like design, obviously the science background, like let's walk through a little bit of the product creation now that you figured out the science and have the, you know, the base, the CBG covered marshmallow leaf.
Well, there's one important ingredient we haven't spoken about.
Oh,
and that's the terpenes.
The terpenes. All right.
Terpenes are nature's flavor molecules. It's what makes lemons smell of lemons, and pines of pines, and cannabis of cannabis. And it's well known that terpenes also have an effect and an impact on your experience of cannabis. They're an important group of compounds. You know, the terpenes on sativa is what makes it sativa. The terpenes on an indica is what makes them indica. So here we are, and we're saying we've got this mixer for cannabis, and you're going to mix it 50-50. And then the question was, well, what's it going to do? Does that mean that now I am, as a consumer, going to get half the amount of terpenes?
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, no, that's not what we want. So we worked with one of the oldest companies in the business, great partners for us, the workshop here in Pasadena, who are experts at recreating the profiles of terpene profiles of cannabis. And so we delved into their library and picked out some of the best combinations they have. And that's how we ended up with the 4 experience sets. The sativa ones have got a terpene profile, and we use typically more than 30 terpene profiles that are sativa leaning. And so when you mix them with sativa, it's a good match. Same with the inspired is hybrid, and the relaxed is indica. And then we have the neutrals, which have basically no terpenes. They can go with anything. That's really kind of the genesis. And then within each one of these experience set, we got 2 halves. We got the classics, which are sort of pure cannabis strain type profiles, super lemon haze, granddaddy purple, Dutch treat. And then for other people, sweets that are basically based on a cannabis profile, but with some more added fruitiness. So Apple Scout cookies, for example, is based on Girl Scout cookies, but with a bit of appleness added to it. And then finally, as you mentioned, Dustin, we have a tobacco flavored Bud Love for those spliff smokers. It smells of tobacco, it tastes of tobacco, it's got all the CBG, it's got all the marshmallow leaf, but no nicotine in it at all.
Wow. It amazes me because it seems like both so simple but hard to get to, but brilliant of a concept, because I think a lot of people are already doing that. I mentioned at the beginning, Dustin hiding behind his combustible state stuff, that I put a bunch of product into a joint and smoke it like a man, Dustin. Put it into there and smoke my pre-rolls. Darn you, state of Ohio. Don't get me in trouble. So I put it into there because I like the mixture of the different kind of profiles from the THC, the different ones, and what they're doing, right? It's just a little bit different feel than having the standard all the one strain. Same with as I started to mix in straight CBG flower into it, I began to feel different ways. I recently, shout out to Reverb Wellness, Josh and Leo, was at their facility here in Northeast Ohio and had a CBG Cannagar, right? An all CBG, a small Cannagar, so a small cigar type pre-roll filled all with CBG. And I was trying to describe to people the effect that it had. Like, it was not your traditional high. It was a comforting, very much what you described, the less anxiety, very centric, but I'm not traditionally high, but I'm feeling something. And you're able to take that and find these profiles and attack both the cannabis consumer with the strains and then sweet. Like, there's some study out recently I saw that the sales of strains that have just the word like cookies or cream in them are exponentially above even stuff like OG and purple, like the sweet sounding names, the pies and all those really are what is hitting. It's what's hitting the sales market, right? It's the flavor profile. All that goes back to what Roy has tapped into is people are now, especially as cannabis becomes more legal, as we get more options, as we become more weed snobbish, we have profiles we like, and you found the way to make those profiles and tap into it. And it's really cool and exciting to see the development outside of more weed, bro. It's just, I love the ancillary markets to what it is. And this is just a further continuation of that I think is really a great idea.
People want choice, people want variety, people want the ability to personalize and customize. And that's kind of what Bud Love allows you to do.
You've always been at the forefront of science in every business that in the businesses you've started. As you're progressing through the cannabis industry, what are some of the frustrations? I know that you can't necessarily mix product in a pre-roll in certain states, correct? Like there, and that even goes with if I was to, I'm not allowed to infuse certain things in gummies in certain states as well. And I'm not allowed, there's a lot of nuance state to state with it. Where do you see some of these partnerships? And do you see yourself being able to or wanting to wholesale the product out and sell it in other retail stores like smoke shops and vape stores and smoking alternative stores as well as just, directly to a consumer?
Yeah, great conversation. So as putting my business hat on, what I absolutely love about Bud Love is that our customer base is the cannabis consumer, whether they're living in the US or elsewhere, whether they're smoking it in a place where it's legal or where it's not, it doesn't matter. So we can tap into the whole cannabis market, which is 10 times bigger than the regulated market.
Mm-hmm.
But because our product is not cannabis, it does not contain THC, it's legal. So I can sell it anywhere. We sell it online on our website, budlove.com. We sell it on Amazon. You can buy it with Amazon Prime. But also, we sell it in smoke shops, as you said, Dustin. So we started off in Texas, and we're really kind of quite saturating in Texas now. All the major cities, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin. We've just been picked up by one of the biggest tobacco retailers in the country called Wild Bill's. So I think
they have 200 stores or 170 stores or something.
We're in some stores in North
Michigan,
Ohio.
They're north of us, about 4 hours spread out. Wow, that's awesome.
The regulated market, and as you were saying, absolutely, Dustin, the laws are absolutely different on a state-by-state basis. Some states, I can sell it in a dispensary. I can mix it in with cannabis. That's not a problem. In some states, you can't sell anything that's not cannabis in a dispensary. So, for example, and so when we can do this, what we do is we partner. Not only do we sell the pouches, but we also partner with a local company and make Bud Love Inside pre-rolls. So we're doing it in Oklahoma. We've just launched one in Michigan with a MSO called Eureka. And so you can buy your pre-roll that's already Bud Love and cannabis mixed together. All you have to do is light it up.
I think that, like, right now, as you're talking through it, is the rise of pre-rolls continues to rack up the chart, right? We talk often about this, like anything that we can't, or anything your consumer can't or won't do, you're able to do for them and then charge them a little more, hence rolling your own cannabis. And it's something that maybe some of the OG legacy cannabis folks scoff at, but it's how tobacco is done, right? The pull your own tobacco marketplace is very, very tiny, right? So it makes sense to do that. I see that absolutely being a win-win for that. I have a curious question though, Roy. So you are legal, you have all these states, but you have a product called Bud Love, right? And Bud is traditional with the cannabis, with the weed, budlove.com. And we should mention, go to budlove.com right now, enter code Wayward15 at checkout. Save yourself a discount on that product, budlove.com, enter Wayward15 as your code at checkout. We'll put that link below, as well as all the links to Bud Love Mixer, all the different social channels that you guys are doing as you're getting ready to launch. I know you got a lot of webinars out there, some investment stuff, a lot of exciting things at budlove.com. We'll have those links below. But it is called Bud Love. We often remiss that we probably should not have called our show because cannabis, because we have a lot of hard time on social media with our title of our show, right? That's why we go under the Wayward Media moniker, because cannabis gets blocked everywhere we go socially. So with budlove.com, social, getting out there, reaching the people, and Instagram and all these other markets are huge for that. Have you found the name, or kind of, because you're in the cannabis space, the unknowingness of the product, have you found that to be a troublesome yet, or in the marketplace that people are confusing you with being a THC product?
Well, so one thing to remember is that, these big online social platforms, they make up their own rules. It doesn't necessarily reflect the law. Mm-hmm. So, some, and I'm not going to mention any by name, so I don't get into trouble, will just not allow anything to do with smoking. Anything. Yes. Others will not allow anything to do with hemp products, period. So it's been a tricky path for us. And to be honest, it wasn't smooth sailing, but we got there. We are very active on Instagram. We advertise on Facebook and on Instagram. We've got some activity on TikTok. We advertise on Google. We advertise on Amazon as well. But it's has involved and continues to involve continuous appeal. So the AI, which is what they usually use to review your activity, usually comes back and says no. And then we have to appeal it and have a conversation with a person and explain to them what we do. And, 50% of the time we get allowed, and 50% we just have to give up and try with a new ad.
It's so confusing sometimes, this industry, right? Because it continues to evolve and grow, right? And so we talked about the state regulations we didn't even really get to, and you're a global company. So every country has their own regulations and such. And so we have this constant change in legislation. We also have a change in public perception, right? We have more people. We have and we've talked about my 94-year-old grandma before, who's super living in Florida, living that Florida life. You know what that means, and would never have touched that dirty hippie lettuce. But now that lady's rubbing some THC topicals, because when you're 95 and shit hurts, you'll do what it takes, right? You'll use what you need to use. And so how do you think Bud Love continues to position itself over the next 5 to 10 years as it goes more legal? Do you continue to dive into the cannabis space? Do you continue to separate yourself from cannabis as this adapts and evolves? Where have you guys thought about Bud Love's maybe positioning in the marketplace? Are we always ancillary? Do you become your own product where you just smoke Bud Love? How do you see yourself growing in the next decade, along with cannabis's constantly evolving ideologies?
Yeah, so lots to unpack there. There's kind of two aspects to this. There's the legal aspect, and I think we're fine on the legal perspective. In fact, outside of the US, it's even easier because it's clear that CBG is not regulated. It's not a drug. Mm-hmm. But then there is the cultural perceptions. And I think those cultural perceptions are actually more of what's driving the social media prohibitions right now. It's just we don't want to have anything to do with this. That's going to change, and that's changing, and it's changing very fast, and I'm glad to see that. But, in terms of the future, there's Europe and the UK, and I want to talk a little bit about that. There are format extensions. So remember, taking it back, this all started with CBG, and we could have a Bud Love that's designed for, dabs, for example. We could have a Bud Love that's designed for edibles. You can take this to other form factors as well. And yes, to date, we've avoided doing the mixing with THC ourselves, but you can see that down the road. You can see a Bud Love pre-roll, you can see a Bud Love edible, etc. In fact, it's no coincidence that the fastest growing edibles are always containing CBG. Now, the other thing that I see as expansion is flavors. I mean, there's an endless amount of flavors we can use. Yep. And in fact, what we're going to be doing is flavor of the month, where we introduced, our next one's going to be called Citrus Jack, which has a beautiful sort of grapefruit tones to it. And then collabs. So we'd love to collaborate with artists. Art is a big part of our brand and our packaging. We'd love to collaborate with an artist and maybe reproduce the profile of their favorite cannabis.
Yes. Or so anything. You could tell a story with those flavor profiles, and it opens the door for so many partnerships. I like that idea of, we may not actually grow the cannabis ourselves, but now we have this partner who we really can collaborate with in a lot of different ways besides just this mixing and this one-time product, this one experience. And that goes to events that they're hosting. It goes to, a certain cause that they're representing with a certain strain. I mean, you can really tell this story with those terpene profiles, and there are so many. And it's an innovative product. It seems so simple on the surface, but when you really dive deep into it, it really has there's so many legs to it, and there's so many possibilities of where you guys can. I can't wait to watch you guys as you guys find more of your footing.
You got a bad connection for a second there, Dustin. I'm going to let you kind of catch back up with this. I think what Dustin, all right, Dustin, I'm going to catch in. You were kind of glitching for a second. Along those lines, though, like Dustin is talking about, you have this idea and it seems so simple, but obviously there's a tremendous amount of work and capital, as with everything does. But you talked about, you're a scientist, but you're also an entrepreneur. Advice. Right. We're always out there. Dustin and I, we want to create our own brand where everyone's looking to create that new thing in the cannabis industry. And it feels like an industry that is ripe with both passion, legacy, money grabs, right? All these other things. And then everything that exists in between. If someone is looking to, or has an idea, when you have these young entrepreneurs, and I'm sure someone like yourself has people say, hey, love it. How do I get to be like that? What is some advice you can offer to young entrepreneurs kind of getting started, and what is the steps to make an idea that's up here a reality, like a tangible thing? How do we get from this to this? And I know there's a lot of steps there, but just maybe some starting tips you've learned as someone who's created a lot of companies along the way.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give away here a little bit of my age. I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years, and every entrepreneur is different. I don't think there is a single way to be an entrepreneur, but my journey and my experiences have always been about, it's not necessarily about the best. Well, a few things I'd say. Firstly, everyone has great ideas. Most people make this mistake. They think, oh, that's such a great idea. Actually, it's so obvious. All great ideas are obvious in hindsight. Someone must have thought about it before, and that's the end of it. They put it aside. The entrepreneurs are those who say, that's a great idea. I bet no one's done it before. I'll do it. So that's the first thought. Don't throw away your ideas. Mm-hmm. The second part is, and this is a cliche, it's all about the execution. So find an idea that you can actually do something about within your means. So, for example, my first business, I had some great ideas, but they required skills and money that I didn't have. And so I ended up going with one that was not my best idea. But what it had going for it was practical. I could start it tomorrow out of my garage, so to speak. And that was my first company. So, you've got to balance this. You want to have a good idea, but also one where you can see ways to start small and grow from there. And that's really important. And don't spend too much time overthinking it, because, my first business, I spent 6 months putting together a business plan. It was beautiful. The statement was corroborated with a reference. Every comma was in place. And then I ended up starting my business. I was there on a Friday night, putting the IKEA furniture together by hand. And I'm putting my books on this bookshelf that I just built, and out falls the business plan. And I start leafing through it.
And you didn't do any of it, did you?
Totally irrelevant.
Yes. And I say that to the students. BC taught a business course at the Cleveland School of Cannabis for a very long time. And I owned my own smoke shop for 7 years. And yes, it's so funny. Every business I've ever started to, we need this business plan. We need all of this reference. And I never once used a damn thing of it. And yet that's one of the first questions that is asked of you as an entrepreneur. Can I see your business plan? And the truth is no, you're going to put it on your fucking desk. You're never going to open it, but you're going to show that I handed you something, which is actually all that mattered. Did I have something tangible, or did I have something that looked like I could represent the thought or the words I'm about to tell you or, describe? But yes, no, it's a funny thing that the business plan, as you are living in a time where your customer is the most educated that they've ever been. How do you see that, navigating that? You guys do a really good job educating, and you do a really good job with your marketing and kind of explaining to people why you might want to use Bud Love. But what are some of those barriers to having a product in a time like that, where the internet is,
Right. Well, let me say on what you were talking about earlier, my big takeout from that business plan story is you're going to learn everything by actually doing. Mm-hmm. So find something that you can start doing, and that's going to be the beginning of your journey. And you're going to learn everything you need to learn by actually doing it, rather than researching it and thinking about it behind the desk. Education. So we have a great product. I'm happy to say that. The feedback we get is fantastic. Have a look at the testimonials we have on our website. Every single one of them is from a genuine customer. But the biggest challenge we have is most people don't know Bud Love exists. And don't know why they would even want to add something to their cannabis. We get a lot of, if you need to add something to your cannabis, you're not smoking good enough cannabis kind of stuff.
Yes, exactly. I wanted to say, as part of Dustin's thing and to tack onto it, is I was telling people about it. If I had a response from the hardcores, it would be that, like, well, bro, that's what I get good weed for. Like, I don't need more flavors profile. Like, I don't smoke dirt weed. Like, those kind of bullet point comments. And so I was trying to think of a retort. And so along those lines with Dustin, like, what is that, the response to people that say those things?
Well, there's kind of different responses. There's the quick one-liner about the, rum and coke, tequila, margarita idea. And then there's the more detailed, if you want to appeal to their logic and science, one of the things that the way I make sense of why Bud Love works is because the entourage effect. We've been, and you said this, Dustin, about going back to older kind of strains. We've been breeding cannabis for lots of mainly commercial money reasons to be very high in THC. But it doesn't make better cannabis. In fact, what it does, if you think about the experience of cannabis and the terpenes and the cannabinoids, it's like a symphony of ingredients on your receptors. But what we've done now, instead of having a symphony, we've basically got a very loud solo piece with THC. And so what we're doing with Bud Love is we're rebalancing that orchestra. We're rebalancing the entourage effect. And so that's another way of trying to maybe appeal to a diehard.
I don't know if I could say it as eloquently as that orchestra thing you did, but that was legit. Like, if you want to describe something, you want to describe the entourage effect, the symphony is the orchestra is a great way with the loud solo player of THC. That was a wonderfully, I'm going to sure you've said that millions of times, but that was a wonderful analogy for cannabis. So back to the point, like, so you have these objections of that. Is cannabis smokers get smarter? How do you continue to say, hey, you need this entourage effect, you need this symphony in your life?
So very good question. And look, there are a lot of people that are very open to the idea. In fact, I would say, and I hate generalizing, but I would say in terms of early adopters, this really resonates with women. And maybe it's because they're not so keen on, I need to have the strongest THC I can possibly get. I take the strongest chili sauce I can get kind of thing. But
dick swinging.
I think early adoption, it resonates, the packaging, the cocktail, don't need it to be super strong all the time. But the best way really is to actually just have someone try it. And so we do a lot of sampling with pre-rolls. We just give them the pre-roll and say, just try it and see what you think. So you're reducing the barriers. You're saying, let's not have an argument. Just try it and see what you think. And the pre-roll is the easiest way to get someone to sample.
That's exciting. It's just pretty amazing. So I'm curious, because we kind of wrap up here in a little bit, Roy, but I'm curious, just as a scientist and with cannabis, which is very much this seemingly this science-driven marketplace. Flower is about 50% of sales, but the other 50% of sales is, how can I take this flower and make it into a new way to consume, whether it's to increase the high, whether it's to increase the therapeutic effect, whether it's to increase the flavor profile. Outside of kind of what you're doing, what are some of the cool innovations that have come up in cannabis recently, or maybe that of coming on the horizon that really kind of blow away the young version of Roy, who is interested more in just smoking the weed and getting high, who now would look back and say, what? They made cannabis into that? What are some scientific advantages or some cool things coming in cannabis that just make you shake your head sometimes?
So when I was back in college, one of the courses I did was chemistry. And so I collected a whole collection of glassware from the chemistry lab and built this most amazing bong. It had running cold water around it. It looked like a scientific experiment.
That's
but
awesome.
The smoke was so cold. I love the innovations we have around smoking tools.
Yes.
Really cool bongs. I also quite like the vaporizers. That's an interesting idea there. You can get the ingredients without creating the free radical burning reaction that is smoking. I love that. I'm also very interested in this alcohol replacement thing. So, beverages, edibles, the big problem with that is, the long onset time.
Yes.
But more and more technologies are coming into play here that allow for quicker absorption. So we now have drinks that, onset within 5 to 15 minutes.
Yes.
Ultimately, where you're going to get to is you have the fast onset, like with alcohol, and then the next bit they need to solve is the fast downset as well. So then you can have another drink and another drink, right?
Oh yeah.
And that's going to come. So then we're going to have basically this kind of social drinking experience that's based on THC, and I would argue CBG as well.
I could see that mixes with kava as well. There's a lot of kava bars popping up all over, and I could see that it's got that same presence and balance in feeling as kava, and I can just see the bars really diving in on that.
And another innovation that I'm really into is lounges, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about lounges. I think it's a perfect fit for Bud Love. If you're running a cannabis lounge,
yes,
you don't want people sitting in the corner being paranoid and not talking to anyone. You want them all being social and talking to each other. Bud Love is great for that. You want to create a personalized experience. The way in a Mexican restaurant you can have guacamole made at your table.
Yes.
Well, here you can have a beautiful lady come and roll for you your own joint, and you can choose the cannabis and you can choose the Bud Love to mix with it, and it's almost like mixology with cocktails. And there you go. There is your own personalized pre-roll. So I'm excited about lounges.
I want to pick your brain real quick as an entrepreneur, because we have, and Dustin talked about, we work with a lot of students and they're always pitching. And I would say by far, one of the most commonly pitched things is cannabis consumption lounges. But I find a lot of problems with it. And I'll give you the biggest in a second. I do want to do a quick shout out, because we got it in the moment here, to Warren Bobrow. We just had an episode with him. Klaus, he is working on nano-emulsification infused beverages, klaus.com. You can visit his website. Check out a past episode with Warren Bobrow, one of the innovators of infused beverages. So consumption lounges, you just brought up the biggest issue, the down, right? It's the same. It's the Starbucks model to me as the consumption lounge. Starbucks has gone away from long fireplaces and big comfy couches to drive-throughs, because selling someone a $5 cup of coffee, there's not a lot of repeat purchases like alcohol. And with cannabis consumption lounges, the biggest issue is once they consume, it could be an hour or 2 hours or more till they need a secondary purchase. And so outside of merch and swag and other type of ancillary things, I always struggle with how do you make money in the consumption lounge space, because you don't have what alcohol is that I need another. It's not the same marketplace right now. And so what would you offer to someone who came with a consumption lounge, or if you've been to some, where are they missing out on making the money?
So I think of it as not as a Starbucks, but more like a saloon. People are coming in there to be with other people, to be social. You might only sell them 2 joints in the night, but you know what? You can sell them food. You can sell them other drinks. There's other things that you can do to make money. But you're right. It's not the I'm going to go in there and have 10 beers type of experiences. I'm going to go and have a nice evening with my friends and, spend money. And then you can sell them stuff to take home with them. So you probably can't sell them cannabis, but you can sell them Bud Love to take home with them, for example.
You know what it is? It's a barbershop and a salon model. That's what you're trying to mimic, because you're going in there for a one-time purchase of a thing that maybe you have to overcharge for. But then you have the conversations and the socialness, and then you have the take-home products like this awesome, fiber palm that I'm doing. That is what it. So as you're talking, you're right. It's not the bar and it's not the Starbucks. The closest analogy right now is more of the barbershop salon, where it's come in for a thing, but stay for the conversation and maybe some take-home stuff.
And you know what you could do? I saw this in Vegas. You can actually have the entrance through the back of the barbershop.
Yes. Now we're talking badass. We're doing it all together.
Roy, I got one more question to ask. I need you to tell me about your hummus.
What?
Ah.
I am a huge hummus person. Did I not do the research? Is Roy a hummus man? I love hummus.
Roy is a hummus man.
What?
And
We got about 5 minutes left. Let's talk some hummus. Shout out budlove.com, Wayward15 to save on your purchase. If you go to budlove.com right now, I believe you have some free pre-roll cones. Some free pre-roll cones with your purchase. Lots of great flavors. Budlove.com. Enter the code Wayward15 at checkout. Let's talk hummus, gentlemen.
Yeah. Hummus, thank you for bringing it up, Dustin, has been my ongoing quest. I have spent 25 years trying to perfect the hummus recipe. And before we run out of time, go to roylipski.com. That's my personal website. And I've shared all the secrets. It's all there, the hummus recipe. And basically, I have been collecting ideas and tips. The biggest one for me was when I moved over from the UK to the US. Actually, my first landing place here in the US was Columbus. I lived there for 3.5 years. I had dinner the night before we left at our favorite Lebanese restaurant in Oxford. And I was like, tell me, my friend, I'm going to America tomorrow. What's the secret of your hummus? And that was my first major breakthrough. Ice cubes. Ice cubes. Huh. So, you know, when you're making hummus, you're usually blending it and you have to add water. Don't add the ice cubes. And that started me thinking, and now there's a whole science behind this. Because what is, me being a scientist, what is hummus? It's an emulsion, like a cream or like milk. And what makes an emulsion an emulsion? It's drops of fat or oil inside water. And if the box drops are bigger, it's going to be more lumpy. If the drops are smaller, it's going to be smoother. And I was looking for that smooth hummus. And so just like making an emulsion, if you keep the temperature down, the drops become smaller. And so when you're blending it, that's rising the temperature. Keep the temperature down, and you're going to get beautiful, smooth hummus. And then there's a whole thing about lemon and acid and garlic. That's also on my website. But there's a few bits and pieces here. It does take time. It does take effort. But the result, you know, my kids are like, they'll never buy store-bought hummus.
You spoiled them on that. I don't know if I've ever had, I mean, I've had some really good ones there's a nice like Middle Eastern restaurant not too far from me that I love that makes an amazing product, but most of mine is store-bought so far. Now I 1,000%. Is it hard to make? Like, is it lengthy?
So the way I do it is lengthy. It'll take you half a day. It's not a lot of work, but there's stages. And so at one stage, I put it in the fridge for an hour to cool down. So, you know, I'm in a routine now. I can do it. I start the chickpeas the night before. I soak them. By 2 p.m. the next day, I've got hummus. And it hasn't been that much work, but there's steps I need to go through and wait in between.
I was just looking at roylipski.com while Roy's talking, looking at the recipe. We'll put that link down below for roylipski.com. Hummus recipes, man. We got cannabis recipes. We got hummus recipes. We got all sorts of recipes here. Thank you, Roy Lipski, CEO, co-founder of budlove.com. Head there right now. Enter the code Wayward15 at checkout to save on your purchase. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
Educating us today on a variety of things about this product. I think Dustin and I think it's clear. It's really awesome. It's a great idea. I look forward to filming our little spot, Dustin, so I can finally try some of the product. Thank you so much for finding us. Like, you found us, and we're really happy to have had this conversation. It's been really wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. Lovely to meet you. It's been a pleasure.
All right, we're going to get rid of Roy there. You guys, thank you very much for listening to us this week. We appreciate it. Every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube. Follow the next day, the audio version of that show anywhere you listen. Give us a subscription. Give us a like. Wayward.media, the company that produces this, at MeetWM. That's where you find us socially, except for Facebook. It's at Meet Wayward. It's complicated. Head to the website, Wayward Media. You'll figure us out. There are links below. Dustin, great to see you again. I'll see you next week, sir.